Welcome everyone from the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. My name's Scott. I'm joined by Stephen today, and I understand we're going to have a look at business rules. I know I speak to lots of customers that have business rules around their various organizations and companies, and they want to be able to formalize them and model them somehow. And so it's a really important topic. So welcome, Stephen. Perhaps you can tell us about some business rules modeling in Enterprise Architect.
Thank you for the introduction, Scott. Always delighted to be here. So we are going to talk about a business rule model, and it's a slightly different thing to business rules as many business analysts might know it. It talks about rule tasks. So let's do a deep dive into this, and let's look at as always, setting our perspective. I have been earlier doing some Ericsson-Penker models, modeling goals and processes. I'm going to change the focus now to a different perspective, and first navigating through the perspective sets. We'll find this model underneath the requirements perspective set, and it is called the business rule model. So the tool focuses our attention into that space, and we can see here there are some patterns already in the tool. And we're going to ignore those for the moment and do things from first principle. Let's close that, and we need to find a location for our new model in the project browser, and that's always something that a modeler must consider. Whereabouts will you put this? And even if you put it in the wrong location, no harm's done. You can easily move it from that location to another one by simply dragging and dropping the package. So here's a good place to start, the analysis model. We have a number of other models in here, data flow diagrams, a message session via a smartphone, a whiteboard diagram, an Ericsson-Penker diagram. So let's create a new package for our diagram. We do that by choosing the little package icon on the browser window. A new package dialog box pops up, and I can put in a rule model for a parking application. So this is an example where someone is applying for a parking permit, and we are going to do a rule model for that in our urban parking system. So you can see now that we've got that package in the browser. Let's move it to the bottom of that group. We can just simply move it its location by using the little arrows on the toolbar of the project browser window. And let's create a diagram in there for our model. Now you notice that Enterprise Architect puts up the diagrams that are available. We've got a rule flow or a rule model. We're going to do a rule flow for this example, and it defaults to the package name rule model parking application. So let's go and create that diagram. The tool gives us a blank canvas there and creates the toolbox pages which are relevant to our topic that we're going to start. So let's do what we would always do with these type of diagrams. Look at the kind of elements that are available through the toolbox and also the relationships. So we've got a start and decision, rule, task, merge, and end. So quite a limited set of elements. Let's choose the start node here, put that onto the diagram, and let's give that a name that makes sense to what we're up to. And it's a start node, and it's a parking application. I'll move that slightly further down because I'm already predicting what my diagram's going to look like. Now, Scott, I like to use a boundary, and a boundary is an element that's available in the Common Elements toolbox. I find it a useful element in many diagrams. It's not formally part of this model, but you'll see how it is a very useful thing to be putting into the diagram. So I'm going to create that boundary there. Again, I'll resize it a little bit into what I think might be the right size for its contents. And again, I'm going to put a start node. So it's like this, everything that's inside the boundary is acting in its own little section of the diagram. So I'll put a start node in there. I don't really want to name that at the moment because it's kind of obvious what it is. I'll move the stereotype to the top there, and then I'll put in a rule task, and I'll give this rule task a name, and it's called check motorist details. And once again, Scott, I always encourage people as they're moving along to be putting in some notes or information that's describing the narrative about what this is all about. The names give away a lot of the the intention, but a note will add a lot more detail. So we've also got this boundary here as well. So let's put some notes in for the boundary as well. Waited to do that while we were doing the other ones. So a comprehensive validation framework that ensures the submitted information meets the system's requirement and legal standards. So that's there. Let's give our boundary a name as well. So we'll do that, and it's going to be a set of rules. So we'll give that boundary a name, and it will pop up there. We need to move this down slightly.
I noticed when you named it, the name appeared on the diagram. So can you hide the name as well, or is it just always there when you use a boundary?
No, I could hide the name as well, Scott. There's no issue with that. Lots of flexibility in the tool to do all sorts of different things. So, if I didn't want that in there, you can see that there are a range of different properties that I can set, including, saying whether it's got fill or not. So I could say, it's going to have a solid fill and what shape it is as well. I could make it into a rounded rectangle, for example. But I'm going to leave it as that shape. But I've changed the fill now, and I will change I inadvertently changed the border type.
Dotted line, yes.
Yeah. So
there's lots of control and flexibility there for how your boundary is presented, which is good to know.
Exactly, and you can see also, Scott, while we're inside this little dialog box, horizontal swim lanes and vertical swim lanes. So I could actually put in a number of swim lanes and divide this boundary up into different sections. But I want to use it just as a way of grouping these elements together. So with that there, we can use a control flow from our toolbox, put it onto that guy there, and we can add another rule here. Let's do that. And, we can validate vehicle information. And again, Scott, as always, we're going to put in, some notes for that element. And I know it's sometimes people are wanting to rush on with their model and get things completed, show some audience the completed diagram, but inevitably it's going to be a very useful thing to do to have these notes in the model, because it will remove people's uncertainty about what the model's about. So we're going to go verify address with this one. And again, let's put some notes in here. Let's not do that. It's just the name. So let's get some notes. So this application for this parking permit that we're talking about, you can see that it's got to do with the address. So authenticates the applicant's residential address to determine their eligibility for specific parking zones. So up until this point, while I know the intention of the diagram because I'm creating it for a particular audience, and as always, Scott, always think about the audience that is going to be viewing these diagrams. Sometimes that audience may be yourself because it's just something you're investigating, but much more often than not, it's going to be viewed by at least one group of people, if not many groups of people. And so already now, I've started to, create some of the semantics, some of the narrative. So authenticates the applicant's residential address to determine their eligibility for specific parking zones and resident permits. This confirmation involves cross-referencing provider documentation with approved residential zones. So if anyone's ever applied for a parking permit, and I certainly have in my suburb, in my street, and I go through a process that's similar to this, but we've started to tell a story now. I'm going to line these elements up and, make sure they're all aligned vertically there, and I can, move them across a little bit, and I can start to put in some of the other relationships. So I'll put that one in there, which is a control flow. These are all flowing, and I'm going to flow to an end element there. And again, I'm not going to put any details on that end. It's kind of quite obvious what was going on with that. And I'll put another control flow. So, Scott, you can see how easy it is just to use the layout options here. I'm just going to, say, let's use the alignment panel of the layout ribbon and say, let's evenly space the selected things down on the page. You can see now we've got a diagram that's quite well formed. I encourage people to use these powerful features in this tool, which in my own mind, when I go back and use a drawing package, sometimes I need to do that on a client site. I'm just always amazed when I come back to Enterprise Architect at the great flexibility in things like alignment. So that gets rid of the noise in the diagram, and people can focus not on the differences between different elements, but on everything being in a certain and ubiquitous kind of shapes and sizes of things. So let me just do one other thing, Scott, before we start this. Is we're going to put a control flow in between the boundary and this element here. So, well, that's the basis of it. I'm going to complete the diagram now. So I'm going to do that. I'll get you to perform some of your magic, and I'll move this diagram onto a completed state, and we can come back and have a look at it.
Well, I've performed my magic, and we can now see a nice completed rule model. So I can see there's lots of colors, and rule tasks and starts and ends all have different colors and decisions. So I'm keen to hear a little bit more about this rule model now and what it helps us achieve within Enterprise Architect.
Thanks, Scott. Yes, we have the completed diagram. I'm just going to use the pan and zoom window to move around the diagram a little bit and have a look at its extent. It's a horizontally orientated diagram, and of course you could make that vertical by just changing the location of some of those elements. Remember that we use the boundary element to act as a container for these things. And you mentioned the colors. Once again, I'm using a legend here, which is dynamically driving the colors. And again, if I look at this and say, look, I don't actually want those colors applied, I want to look at it in a more vanilla way, I can turn those legends off. And I have some of the elements that I've marked up with colors individually, but you can see that most of them have actually been returned to their plain. I can apply that legend again, and we've got the colors there. I could put any legend with any color scheme that I wanted to, but the useful thing here is that I didn't, during this time that we were performing the magic, I didn't create this legend myself. I was reusing a legend that's available in the Urban Parking System libraries package. So you see we've got libraries, we've got checklists, we've got image assets there, and we've got legends, and we've got a rule model legend. So what I can do is just drag that on to the diagram from that point, and it automatically updates the diagram. So I'll just show you that in, and I'll just remove that from the diagram for the moment. You'll see that the diagram goes back to that state. I'll drag a diagram from the legends onto that diagram, and you can see that instantly that again colors the diagram. So
that would be so powerful if you had thousands of elements. It just allows you to update the colors on a diagram instantly.
Yeah, so I do see clients, Scott, using the feature to color things individually, and there are certainly many cases where that might be the most useful thing to do and the appropriate thing to do. But in many cases, being able to dynamically change the element colors based on some predefined rules in your organization, it's so powerful, and we can apply it from any or using any filter. So just to recap on that, some people may not have seen that. We've got this based on element stereotype. So inside the legend panel of the properties window, we're looking at the element, and we can of course do connectors as well. But I can edit this and say, what element property do I want it to be based on? We've chosen stereotype. It could be type, version, status, visibility. We can have all sorts of legends ready to show, for example, the status of the elements and what status something is in, whether it's proposed or validated.
More than one legend on a diagram?
Yeah, you can, Scott. You can overlay legends on diagrams and turn them on or off. So I could place a number of legends on a diagram and then simply go into here and say apply auto color, and that would if I turn that legend off, as we've seen before, and save it, that will turn off that color. But I apply it back again. I could have a second legend that was talking about status, and I could simply select that and apply the auto color there. So very, very, very powerful thing to do. And again, once again, you can see the boundaries. Just one thing in passing, Scott, I was using the pan and zoom window, which is one of my favorite, diagramming features. I find it just such a useful thing, particularly in presentations, to move around when sometimes someone in the audience says, hey, but what about the permit issuance? How does that work? I can simply just flick over. But there are times when you may want to see the entire diagram. Now I can do that by zooming in and out, and but that gives me a resolution that's kind of unreadable. So what I do is I keep it in a nice resolution, and what I can use is a layout option here. And the best way for me to do that is to use the portals window. So over here on the right hand side, I've got the portals window hidden away there, but I can choose a wide view from the workspaces. So the portals have a number of different options: recent places, workspaces, perspectives. I'm going to choose workspaces, and we've got groups of workspaces, and I can see one here under core called wide view. Let's click that one and see what happens. So you can see now, Scott, with a diagram that's oriented in this landscape kind of format, that we can get the entire view of the diagram by choosing that wide view. And that gives me the ability, to look at all these different elements. And I can just put that back by going to my portals window again and saying, look, I want to do core modeling, and that returns to that particular view. So that's it for the rule model, Scott. I hope you found that interesting.
I know, really interesting, and it's even great just seeing how you can use the portals window to get rid of all of your toolboxes and make it easier to view the diagram in an instant. So that was also useful and interesting, and something I hadn't seen before. So that's fantastic. So thanks, Stephen. To all our audience that are watching videos on the Sparx Systems YouTube channel, we encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. We love getting your feedback. We love hearing from you, and it's really great to have you like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with the latest and greatest from Sparx Systems. In the description below, there's details to reach out to Stephen if you want to talk to him about any of the issues that have come up here, and his LinkedIn details and website details are listed below. So as always, thank you very much for your diagramming expertise and your expertise around enterprise architect and modeling. It's been fantastic, Stephen. Great to see rule model flows and how to model them in enterprise architect.
Always a pleasure to be sharing knowledge, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.